Good afternoon. My name is Peter Dauber from Dauber Consulting, and welcome to the SAP IQ Roadmap webinar on showing you what to expect from Sybase IQ or SAP IQ now in the coming month. So, quick housekeeping on the agenda. Dauber Consulting is sponsoring this event, so we give a little quick introduction what we are, what we stand for, and then we go into the presentation on the roadmap, and at the end we have a Q&A. You are all in listening only mode, which means that you cannot speak for questions, but you can use the panel on the system to type in the answers. I will be moderating the questions and send it to our presenter, Courtney Clausen from SAP. She will be presenting the IQ roadmap, and she also will be sticking around to answer your questions. And again, my name is Peter Dauber. I'm the CEO of Dauber Consulting. Dauber Consulting is a leading IT and database services company. We are the marquee consulting company for all legacy Sybase technologies. We're working with large companies, we're working with smaller companies. We're specializing in Sybase IQ, and by the way, right now it's called SAP IQ, so that's the name change since January 1st. So it's IQ ASE, it's replication server, it's Power Designer, that's our sweet spot. And we've been in business for quite some time, and we also provide cross-training of Oracle and SQL Server people who want to get onto the ASE platform to be trained on. The four areas of Dauber Consulting that we're servicing is strategic database consulting that encompasses everything from pre-implementation, post-implementation, performance and tuning, down to complete data warehouse database projects from soup to nut, data modeling all the way to implementation. We're also offering remote database management services that you can hire us on a set price to take care of your database, as well as the training program that I just mentioned. And we are a SAP VAR for database and technology, so we are licensed and registered to resell all the legacy Sybase and HANA products from SAP. Quick what's ahead, and that's also important for everybody who is in the legacy Sybase technology or wants to get into the IQ ASE Rep Server, Power Designer, and Power Builder technologies. There is in April 14th to 17th, the ISOC Tech Annual Conference. ISOC Tech stands for International SAP User Group Technology, formerly known as ISOC, International Sybase User Group, which will be in Atlanta. Quick reminder, there's an early bird registration right now till tomorrow, where you get the free hotel room when you register by tomorrow. This is an incredible early bird offer that I wouldn't even turn down. I haven't never heard of that. So please take advantage of that if you're in the legacy Sybase space. Especially if you're in IQ, you will learn a lot of things from the leading IQ experts at this conference. The link to register is right there. And Dauber Consulting will be there in force, so you can take advantage of us. We will be there to answer questions and be present with a good amount of people. We also will be at Sapphire Now, which is the SAP ASOC conference in Orlando, June 3rd to the 5th. We will have a kiosk in the exhibition hall. If you're at Sapphire Now, please stop by, say hi. We will be right there in the middle of where the action happens. But without further ado, I will hand over the presentation to Courtney. Courtney Clausen is the SAP IQ product manager, and she will give you a roadmap of how SAP IQ will look in the future. And Courtney, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Let me just start the presentation. So let me just check with you real quick, Peter. Does the presentation show up okay?
Yeah, I see the presentation.
Okay, great. Well, I'm pleased to speak to you all today about the IQ roadmap over the next year. Peter introduced me. I am Courtney Clausen. I am Director of IQ Product Management here at SAP. Always excited to talk about IQ. It's a great product, and we have some great innovations coming up in the next year. So let's get started on that. With all roadmap presentations, we always have the standard disclaimer. We do the best we can to let you know exactly what's coming in the next year or next period of time that the roadmap is for. We can't always predict everything that's going to happen, and sometimes things change a little bit. So this is to the best of our knowledge, but don't make any purchasing decisions based on what you hear today. I'm going to set a quick, brief foundation of where we are currently with IQ before we move into the roadmap. Talk a little bit about its strategic importance to SAP and yet its continuation as a separate analytics database that works independently for you. And we'll talk a little bit about architecture, and then we'll go into the main features and capabilities coming in 2014. So first, I think anybody who's an IQ user today, none of this will be news to you. What makes IQ a really great product? It was the #1 column store that came out commercially many, many years ago. We all know that column store databases are much more capable for analytics type applications, and IQ certainly shines in that area with ability to run very, very fast queries over standard row-based traditional DBMSs. And it has some really unique qualities around data indexing and the ability to support very heavy ad hoc query workloads with large amounts of data and many, many concurrent users. That's a sweet spot with large amounts of data. And we consider it as a platform for building smart applications. We have a rich application services layer that supports that. And it is an open platform that we've integrated with best-of-breed third-party applications, ETL and BI tools and other kinds of tools. And with our integration with SAP, we are doing even more optimized integration with the SAP technologies such as HANA and business objects. Hold on just a second. Peter, is this side panel covering up the slides?
No, it's
okay.
fine.
We're fine.
It
okay,
just covers up the bottom, but you're okay.
Okay, good. It's kind of covering on my screen here. So SAP IQ has been in the market for a long time as a standalone analytics database. With our merger with SAP, we are being brought into the SAP HANA data platform very closely. When SAP bought Sybase, they acquired a lot of database technology and other kinds of technologies such as Rep Server and Power Designer. And all of these assets have a value independently as independent products, but they also have value with this SAP HANA data platform, which is your enterprise data platform for all your data processing needs. And you will see later in this presentation how IQ is playing a very special role in the HANA data platform and a very valuable role. And just before we move into the roadmap, let's just give a picture of what IQ is. This is a logical architecture, shows a 3-layered architecture with a very solid foundation at the bottom, the column store and the MPP queries, the high-speed loading, the ability to do information lifecycle management. that's the solid foundation upon which rests a very rich application services layer. We've got nice, complete SQL language. We have the capability of doing full text search on unstructured data. We have in-database analytics framework for extending IQ with your own custom built functions. And we've made it more developer friendly with some database access APIs that work with web programming languages such as Perl and PHP and Python and Ruby. And we have integration with Hadoop and R. And all of these application services capabilities lend themselves to building smart applications, and that's what you see at the top. We have nice integration with SAP technology, Power Designer, Replication Server, and data services, as well as third-party products where we have interesting development administration tools or predictive analytics tools. So IQ is really a very mature platform for building smart applications. Now let's move into the roadmap, and we're going to be covering through the year 2014. On this slide, you will see the evolution of IQ for the last several years. We had the IQ 15 family, and the theme of that was VLDB. VLDB we defined as database sizes in the tens to hundreds of terabytes. When we do a release family, we do a sequence of minor releases, and we begin with improvements to the foundation layer of IQ. And we did that with 15.1, doing some improvements on compression and how data is represented and being able to compress data very well. Then we move up in the next set of minor releases through some capabilities in the application services layer. We build our in-database analytics framework, and we added some text indexes so you can do full text search. We added distributed query processing. As you get into very large database scale and clusters of IQ servers, you want to be able to make use of all the cores across a grid. We can do that with our distributed query processing. We brought in some Hadoop integration and the ability to do MapReduce-like programming within IQ with our table parameterized user-defined functions. And then we ended the 15.4 family and took a new leap forward with 16.0, which came out last year. And now we've moved from VLDB to XLDB, and we've moved the focus of IQ to being able to handle much, much larger scale data warehouses up in the petabyte range. And for those of you on the phone, some of you may have heard that we have achieved with HANA the world's largest data warehouse, Guinness World Record, a 12 petabyte data warehouse with HANA and IQ combined, and an application from BMMsoft in there as well. So that's really exciting news. You'll have to read up on that. With this, on this slide, you'll see 16.0, SP2, and SP3. So now that we're part of SAP, we are changing our release approach. Instead of having a sequence of minor release, now we have a sequence of support packages. And this aligns with how SAP releases its HANA product. The support packages come out on a biannual basis for HANA, mid-year and end of year. And a support package can contain new features as well as issue fixes. So we now have adopted that, and we started this past fall. So we came out with 16.0 SP2 and SP3. A number of features came out with that. And then mid-year 2014, we'll be jumping right to SP8 because we want to align our release numbering with HANA's. It's just a lot easier to keep track when we have a compatible numbering scheme. So HANA SP8 and IQ SP8 will come out mid-year 2014. The key themes you see in the blue box there for IQ are two very, very major features. One is focused on IQ and its companion role with HANA, and the other feature is really around IQ as continuing to be a standalone product. So IQ continues on both those paths. The shared nothing architecture, for those of you who might be a little nervous about hearing about that or really excited about hearing about that, this is an optional shared nothing architecture. If you are running IQ on your high performance SAN and you're very happy with how it's working and how it performs, there's no changes required. But for those of you who want to move into a different paradigm with the more classic shared nothing MPP architecture with the ability to use direct attached storage instead of a SAN for your database to be able to do more easy scaling, then you'll be very interested in this feature, which we'll talk about in more depth going forward. So these are the primary buckets of features coming out in this coming year. One is the shared nothing feature that has several different aspects to it, which we'll get into in the next slides. And then we're continuing on the extreme data volume theme with, this is the companion role of warm data management for HANA. IQ is starting to play a very important role for SAP doing that kind of offloading work, and you'll hear about that. And then we're adding distributed loads to be compatible with our distributed query engine. And any of you who have started using the row-level version low latency write Delta store, that's in IQ 16. That was only on simplex up to this point. We're bringing that out on multiplex. And then on the bottom, you're going to see some really significant improvements in the SAP Control Center or Sybase Control Center. So I think you'll be excited to see some of the improvements coming there, because even Sybase Control Center is moving into more of a strategic role at SAP. So this is an abstract diagram of IQ 16. Shows the major components, the loading engine and the query engine, the column store, the security and multiplex and administration and monitoring aspects. These are the major features and components of IQ. And then what you're seeing here is the improvements coming in 2014. So we'll talk about integrated system management, the distributed load that's coming in, HANA extended tables, point-in-time recovery feature. I think you'll be really excited to hear about that. And the shared nothing feature, and the RLV store on multiplex. So let's jump right into the shared nothing feature first. IQ 16.0 came out with its re-engineered column store, and it also added some capabilities to making IQ multiplex and distributed query processing behave a little more like a classic shared nothing architecture where the nodes operate very independently from each other. And we achieved this with something called data affinity. The distributed query processing came out in IQ 15.3, and that allowed the query engine to break a query up into a set of pieces or fragments and then distribute those fragments to different servers in the multiplex to work on in parallel, and then it would aggregate the results back for the user. These are for the very big complex queries that would not run in a performant manner on a single server. It could really use more cores and more memory, so then that query would get distributed. But when 15.3 came out, those distributed query assignments were made fairly randomly. Whenever a server was done with its fragment, it could go back and get another one, but the assignments were fairly random. With 16.0, we added something called data affinity, and the query engine tracks, or the IQ server tracks, which servers have which data sets or partitions already sitting in their cache. So when a query is distributed, it'll be working, the fragments will be working on individual data portions or partitions or sets. Now the query engine will send the work assignment to the node that already has data in cache. So for example, server A has data set 3 in cache, and this particular fragment needs to work on data set 3, it'll send it to server A rather than some other server. So server A already has its data in cache, doesn't have to go back to the shared store to reload its cache. So all these servers are operating fairly independently as much as possible with warm caches without having to go back to the shared store. This last fall with SP2 and 3, we brought out DAS cache. So this is moving another step along the road. And DAS cache is sort of like virtual memory for the data affinity cache. So now if the data affinity cache fills up or a server does get a slightly different work assignment that isn't for that particular data set and needs to bring in new data from the shared store, well, it can flush out its data affinity cache out to this direct attached storage cache. So it's still kind of close by. It's still on attached storage. You're still not having to hit the shared store. And then if it needs to bring it back in later, it can easily do it from its shared cache. So it's kind of like virtual memory for the data affinity. With DAS files, direct attached storage files, this is coming out in SP8, which is mid-year. And this is where we have the optional, and I would like to still stress optional because it's a very flexible thing. You can either continue with your normal shared store and shared store DB files and DB spaces, or you can move another direction, or you can even mix and match. So with direct attached storage DB spaces and files, now we're distributing the IQ database in a balanced fashion across all the servers in an IQ multiplex. And I will explain more about how it does that. There are various partitioning schemes, and it will also observe your already range and hash partition tables when it does that partitioning. Now your IQ database is distributed across all of these different servers. They operate virtually independently. Now, obviously, queries will still require some shared data occasionally. So when data needs to be shared, it will be shared across a high-speed interconnect among the servers, and that's how they will manage to share data when they need to. So this gives you an option of commodity hardware, commodity storage, and very scalable, quickly throw in a new server with some new attached storage and you're off and running. So how do we accomplish this? There's no perfect MPP architecture. There's the shared everything, there's the shared nothing. The downside of the shared everything or the shared store is that you have many, many servers that are hitting the same resource. There's possibility for contention there. So that's the downside of the shared everything, but the advantage is everybody has access to that shared store. You don't have to worry about data duplication and rebalancing and all of that. It's just all there and all available. Shared nothing, while it seems like the perfect architecture, everybody's got their own data and they're working independently. But the other side of shared nothing is that now with data attached to the compute nodes, if that compute node goes down, it takes its data with it. Therefore, shared nothing architectures require mirroring. So for every server in the IQ multiplex with these direct attached storage files, there will be a corresponding mirror on another server. And so if server 1 goes down, it doesn't take its data down with it. And when you can bring the server back up again, you can restore its data from the mirror. We also give you the option to create these DAS files without a redundant copy. There's maybe occurrences where you've got very transient data. It can be reconstructed easily, or it doesn't need that permanence. You can also optionally create a DAS file without a redundant copy. And then DAS files elasticity is an important piece of this too. It's great and we've seen this in POCs with IQ against a shared nothing competitor. You go in, you do the POC, you distribute your data nicely across all of your nodes, and it runs great, and you walk out the door and everybody's happy. But in the real world, data changes, servers go up and down, your data doesn't stay in that nice balanced place that it was when you first set it up. So you need to take this into account, and you need to provide the ability to rebalance data as it changes, as servers come online, as servers go offline. And indeed, we will be doing this with IQ as well. You'll see some of these features come in more strongly in the latter part of the year. But when servers are added or removed, when data changes, IQ server will redistribute data accordingly at the correct time to make sure that data stays balanced and that servers are working pretty much with the same workload and the same amount of data, and nobody's idle and nobody's overworked. And then once again, this ability, you can actually mix and match. You could have an optional shared store along with your shared nothing aspects of your architecture. It's very, very flexible. If you've got a strong amount, a large amount of shared data and you don't want to be passing it over the network all the time, you might opt to have some of that data sitting on shared devices. So it's up to you, mix and match, stay with what you've got, completely adopt shared nothing. It's up to you. So we're really excited about this feature. It has a lot of benefits for us. It lets us acquire a more compatible architecture with SAP HANA when we're working in that companion mode. It lets us move to the cloud more easily. And it satisfies some concerns that some people have around cost. Direct attached storage can be certainly less expensive than SAN, although there are lots of inexpensive SAN options out there now, but sometimes there's perception that attached storage is really a cheaper way to go. So we're making sure that we satisfy that part of our market and customer base. Okay, so that covers shared nothing, and our second bucket is the extreme data bucket, and we're going to talk about this IQ as a companion for HANA and other SAP products, and the distributed load feature and the RLV store on multiplex. So first, I want to give you a little background. For those of you who are pure Sybase technology users and haven't moved into the SAP realm too much yet, this would be new for you. But IQ is becoming a preferred solution for SAP around any kind of data aging, data archiving needs. And here are three examples. One that is very, very popular right now is the nearline store for SAP BW. SAP BW is an application that runs on top of many different kinds of databases, and more and more it's running on top of HANA for very high speed performance. But all data is not alike. Not all data is current. Some data is not accessed as frequently. Some data doesn't really need to be cluttering up your real-time memory, can be pushed off to the side to a different kind of repository. You can accept a little bit slower response time for that kind of data because you're not accessing it as frequently. So IQ is perfect for this. And IQ is now the preferred NLS solution for BW. Within BW, you can create archiving rules and move data off to IQ, and it will transparently federate queries between the two stores, your primary store and your NLS store. And it lets a BW on HANA deployment scale to much, much larger volume at a better price point. Second one is ILM for SAP Business Suite. SAP Business Suite has something called an ADK, or an archive development kit, to let it archive out data to archive files. And this is pretty cold storage data at this point. You're really not accessing it in an online manner. And IQ is now being used for that as well. Through the ADK, you can store all your archive files as blobs inside IQ and an index structure to quickly find them. So that's really coming out and becoming more broadly known. And then the third item is something really a HANA feature, but IQ is a piece of that. So HANA has something called Smart Data Access. It's an optimized data federation, query federation capability that lets HANA reach out to separate databases and data sources for accessing data and querying data and joining it with your HANA data. And SDA works with IQ and optimized around IQ. And with the federated query between HANA and IQ, HANA understands that most of the data might be sitting in IQ, will therefore push the query down to IQ, let it do the processing, and return the smaller result set back up to HANA. So that all came out, it's all out in the market. SDA came out last June with HANA SP6. And now we're taking it a step forward. Now we're starting to make that SDA, or Smart Data Access, much more transparent to the user. And this is called HANA Extended Storage. And this allows you to create HANA tables with an attribute of extended, meaning that that data is extending down into IQ. And this lets you treat all your data as if it sits in HANA, even though part of it may have moved off as warm data into the IQ store. And we're also sort of messaging this around as a native big data solution, because now with IQ being able to handle up into the petabyte scale, there are a lot of your use cases, your enterprise data use cases that can be accommodated by HANA with IQ without having to go to a very, very different kind of big data processing technology such as Hadoop. So, you know, it's nice if you can keep the technology pretty compatible. They're both databases. They work very much in sync with each other. Hadoop is still going to be necessary for those really, really monstrous situations. But for a lot of your enterprise use cases, you are probably going to be quite satisfied with HANA and IQ working together. And the requirements around HANA Extended Storage came from our customers. They want to manage data cost effectively, but still with desired performance. And the application should be able to define which data is the hot data and needs to stay in HANA real-time memory, and which data is warmer and less frequently accessed and can move off to a little bit slower store. We want it to be able to handle very, very large data sets. We want to make sure that IQ really doesn't show up here. IQ is very hidden behind the scenes, doing its work. It all looks like it's HANA, and that's the direction we're going to make these two data processing domains work very seamlessly and to look like a unified environment for the user. And then I mentioned that native big data solution already. So the first use case for extended storage, we're focusing on BW once again. SAP BW has some very large system tables, persistent staging area, and corporate memory, and these are not real-time accessed by the user. So they were great candidates for extended tables. You'll see that coming out in the end of the year. I just wanted to also make note of the nearline store in IQ. Currently, there are currently separate stores, but we're moving towards IQ being able to handle all of these use cases inside the same IQ database. All right, so that covers extended storage. Distributed data loading. This is pretty straightforward. We came out with distributed query processing. You break the query up into pieces. You pass the pieces out to different servers. They do their independent work and aggregate any final results. And we're doing the same thing with the loading operations. We made IQ loading very, very parallel on a single node. But now we've taken some lessons from the distributed query engine, and we can now we'll now be able to take a load, break it up into pieces, pass it out to multiple servers, get that load done even faster, and return to the user with a committed load. You'll see the load plans. We now have graphical load plans. They will also get modified to represent when you've distributed a load. So it'll look a lot like what the query engine produces in terms of diagnostics and logging. And the final aspect of Extreme Data is our row-level version store on the multiplex. The row-level version store was this kind of little bit of HANA living in IQ. It's a low latency Delta store. It's all in memory. It's row-level locking, multiple writers to the same table, designed for fast writes. It has its own write-ahead transaction log, and then data migrates down and merges into the main store on an asynchronous basis and periodic basis. And that was available initially only on Simplex. We've had a lot of interest in this feature, and our multiplex customers would like to make use of it, so we're bringing it out on multiplex. For the first version of it, there will be a single writer node on the multiplex that will have the RLV store, and then the second version of it at the end of the year, all the writers on a multiplex may have an RLV store. So you can have really distributed fast loading across a multiplex supporting many different concurrent clients. That's the second bucket of features. Our third and final bucket of features is enhanced administration. We have a new feature coming out, very big feature. that brings several benefits to it. So up to this point, the IQ transaction log was embedded inside the database, and IQ has a backup and restore capability. If you should have a disastrous circumstance where you need to bring your database back up, you would need to go back to the most recent backup, which might not be quite as current as you'd like. So with point-in-time recovery, we've pulled the transaction log out of the database. It is now externalized. And what you'll be able to do now, and here's an example, is let's say you did a backup on a Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, everything was fine, and Thursday you had a disk crash, a disk failure, and you need to recover the database from a backup. Well, in the past, you had to go all the way back to Monday. Now you'll be able to restore your backup from Monday and then roll forward the transaction log to a point in time of your choosing. Maybe Thursday morning, everything was running fine, and that's where you'd like to restore to. You will be able to do that. So we'll roll forward all the committed transactions from the transaction log and bring you up much more current in your recovery process. This has a secondary benefit in that up to this point, because IQ is kind of a different animal around transaction logging, it could not be a data source for replication server. Now it looks more like a traditional database in this aspect, and it's now a candidate to be a data source for a replication server agent. That is still in the works on when exactly that will come out, but now IQ is a candidate for replication source. Then we have, finally, our integrated systems management. So most of you probably were used to using Sybase Central. Sybase Central is a great tool, but it was limited in its ability to really do very high volume management of many, many servers. So Sybase Control Center at the time came into being, and it gradually evolved until it was able to do everything Sybase Central used to be able to do. At that point, we no longer are supporting Sybase Central. Sybase Control Center is the preferred method for administration and monitoring, and it can now do everything that Sybase Central used to do. But it can do it a lot better. It can do it at much higher number of servers. It's got web-based interface. There's a lot of benefits there for somebody who's administering a large landscape. So its name has changed, just like our other names, which rebranded to SAP Control Center. And SAP is adopting it as an administration tool beyond the Sybase databases, and also bringing in HANA as one of its manageable servers, and we're also bringing in SQL Anywhere, which we didn't have before, and also being able to move it from handling 100 servers up to about 250 servers. And with that, we're doing some re-architecture of it, which will be coming out in the next year. It has had two pieces up to this point, a server piece and then an agent piece. And that's slightly being adjusted to having what we call the data management console. And that will be the high-level management console to do aggregated views of data center health. You'll see some pictures of that. And then each individual server that it's managing will have an onboard piece. And those onboard pieces understand the particular flavor of server and the particular details about that server that are interesting and need to be managed and monitored. So from the data management console, you can see the high-level views. If you want to dig down, there'll be URL direction to the onboard management console inside the individual server, and then you get to see all the details about an IQ or an ASC or a replication server or a HANA. And this data management console will live in a very small footprint version of HANA. XS is the application server that runs in HANA. And it will also interface to the landscape management database, which will have all the details about what servers you're managing, how to connect to them, what types they are. And it can read all those details from the landscape management database. And these are some of the views that you're going to be able to see. This is in the data management console. You'll be able to see these aggregated high-level views with alerts and servers that are up or down or approaching a crisis situation. And then you can dig, I'm sorry, there's one other topology view that we want to show you. You can also, when you're managing a large landscape, it's not only interesting to see these servers individually, but how they connect to and interact with each other. So you'll be able to see some of these topology views as well. So this is a good time for a summary, and we'll have some time for some questions. So once again, want to emphasize that SAP IQ continues as a standalone product, as a standalone analytics database, but it also is a strategic asset for SAP's database portfolio. It's part of the HANA platform. It's playing this role in temperature-sensitive data management, and you'll see it kind of disappear next to HANA to make it look like a very unified data processing platform, and to be able to operate at very, very large volumes of data. And also to emphasize that the next year is really chock full of a lot of very exciting and innovative features, the shared nothing MPP, the extended storage feature, the RLVR multiplex, point-in-time recovery, this evolution of SAP Control Center for more sophisticated monitoring and administration, and to have this whole technology family at SAP come together in a very fluid and cohesive and unified form is the direction that we're going with IQ. Here are some resources for your use, and I believe Peter will be sending this presentation out so you can refer to that, some videos and some how-to tutorials. We've had our free downloads for a while with a quick start guide, a very active developer site. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me with any kind of questions if we weren't able to address them at this webinar during the Q&A session, then feel free to reach out to me individually. Happy to take your questions, and I will get back to you. So, Peter, I think we are ready to begin the Q&A.
Sure. Thank you, Courtney. Very interesting presentation. And yes, we did get a couple of questions in. I just want to bring the presentation back to the announcement for the Isaac Tech, and I get in that a little bit deeper. But I got a question from the Netherlands. A large bank in Amsterdam is asking a question regarding end-of-life support, and the question comes from that it seems that the end-of-life date for 15.4 is actually past the end of life of 16. So the question is, should they skip 16, or what's the story behind that?
Yes, we are updating those end of life dates. When we came in with SAP, we ended up with some default end of life dates for our newest products coming out, our newest products that came out, which was 16 in particular, and the default was 2 years after its release date. So that is, we will be updating that, and IQ16 will be supported for at least 2 more years, and we will be also making sure that it's supported at least 1 year beyond our next minor release. I've talked a lot about support packages, but we will at some point come out with a minor release as operating system platforms go end of life, and the user would actually have to update their operating system environment. That's at the point we create a new minor release. So 16.0 will go at least a year past when 16.1 comes out, and that's not defined yet. We also will be supporting our support packages. We'll support 2 at a time. So we have SP2, 3, 8, we have 8, 9 coming out. We'll make sure that we always support at least 2 support packages going forward. So we'll get that site up to date. We've just been negotiating with the teams to make sure we're all comfortable with the terms. So we'll get that up to date, and not to worry that you are going to lose support too quickly.
Okay, thank you. Another question obviously is always around the licensing. There's a lot of cool features, and as we all know from the past, they all come at a price. So what's the the advanced feature licensing structure for all the good stuff we saw?
So there will be no new options coming out, and all the ones that I covered, I believe, fit into the core product. And we're also kind of evaluating licensing around the way that SAP and HANA does their licensing too. So there may be some changes coming there, but there are no new added options based on what I showed today.
Okay, great. Very cool. It's actually part of the core license package. I think a lot of people will appreciate that. I have a question from your presentation on the SCC, now called SAP Control Center. What does this mean in regards to SAP DBA Cockpit, which apparently by right now is the management console? Is there a handoff to SAP as Control Center, or will these two products remain in parallel?
These two products will remain in parallel. You'll see DBA Cockpit accommodate some more IQ monitoring. The SAP Control Center there is going to be handling some HANA monitoring. We still have HANA Studio, so we still have multiple tools. They are not yet coalescing, although they are, all of them, kind of broadening their reach to bringing in other technology that they now are sitting next to. For example, the BW NLS IQ, the DBA Cockpit now can monitor the IQ store, some aspects of it. So this is, there's sort of good news and bad news. The good news is that we're not retiring anything. The bad news is we got all these different tools. The good news is we have a lot of choices. The bad news is it can be kind of confusing. So the answer is these tools will continue in parallel for some foreseeable period of time. At some point, hopefully we'll see things coalesce into some common monitoring and administration.
Just another question, and it's around the task list and the whole shared nothing philosophy around that. Apparently today there are two prevailing technologies: it's the shared nothing or the shared everything. And to me, it looks like IQ is the first system that actually provides both at the same time. And the question to me is it at the same time, or do you have to choose one over the other when you actually configure IQ?
No, you can actually mix and match. You can choose to stay where you are. You can choose to go pure shared nothing, or you can choose to do a mix and match approach. One mix and match approach might possibly be if you have a large amount of shared data, you don't want that data being replicated across the different nodes, or you don't want it being passed across the network. You still might find an advantage to keeping some smaller shared store to handle that data. So it's up to you. It's a very flexible architecture, and you can mix and match.
Great. Do you have a best use case for the shared nothing with an IQ? An example?
An example of why you might want to go to?
Shared nothing. Why would you use shared nothing with IQ? What's the use case for that?
I think probably the biggest pressures and why we really went this direction is that stand technology can be expensive. It's also often, if you have a stand in an enterprise, it's often shared with other departments. So if you need more storage, you often have to go up several levels and get approvals, and some companies even have no stand expansion policies. So this makes IQ more nimble and agile. You can control your storage, you can control your compute nodes, it's all commodity. You can make it as high-end scale storage or as low-end as you like, and just gives you some more flexibility. So I think that was one of the big motivators on that. And then cloud is quite vocally one of the thrusts for SAP and many companies now, that we need to have a cloud story. And for IQ to have the share nothing architecture, it's really much easier to sit up in a public cloud and make use of the storage that's available up in the cloud. There may not be nice SAN type or shared storage technologies in cloud environments, so this lets us have both an on-premise and a cloud presence.
And going down the whole shared nothing, what comes to my mind, and maybe that's something you can walk us through. If you start off in a simplex and you have direct attached storage, then you can turn a simplex into a multiplex with another system that has direct attached storage, correct?
Correct.
So that's an easily expandable, which then allows you what you just said in the cloud, where you don't necessarily have control over your attached storage, that you can build a multiplex with actually cloud servers out there, correct?
Exactly, exactly.
That's very nice. And there's another question coming in. Are there multiple DAS files per node in an IQ shared nothing mode?
Yes, you may have multiple DAS files. DAS files and DAS DB spaces will belong to a logical server. We still have the concept of a logical server in this new mode, where let's say you have 10 servers and you want to take 2 of them and allocate them to the sales department and 3 allocated to the marketing department, etc. And so the attached storage in these direct attached DB spaces and files belong to a logical server. You have true partitioning and, in a sense, kind of a multi-tenancy around an IQ multiplex. So yes, you can have multiple DB files and they will be associated with a logical server.
Nice. Another question on for HANA and IQ. You mentioned extended tables in HANA. So how exactly would this work? You essentially create a table in HANA with an extended feature that then knows that behind that is an IQ service. How exactly would this work, and how does the data flow from HANA to IQ? Essentially, there's only so much storage on the HANA end, and then there's the backend storage from IQ. So at some point, you add more and more data. It's like, okay, how does the data flow from the HANA portion into the IQ portion?
Right. So yes, when you load a HANA table, it will be loaded through HANA, but it won't rest at all in any HANA type tables. It will be shot straight through to IQ and be bulk loaded into the IQ table. There will also be some mechanisms for doing a load from files and to directly load the data into the IQ portion of the table. Initially, we're starting out with classic extended tables. So with a classic extended table, all of the data is going to sit in IQ. But when you load, you will load HANA, but it will immediately send it right off to IQ without having it rest and take up HANA memory.
So it looks more like a proxy table in ASE, correct?
I guess you could kind of say that, but it's much more transparent.
Yeah. But the concept of understanding, you only see a representation of the table, not the data in HANA.
Right, and it will look like a HANA table. There's no kind of explicit creation of proxy tables and virtual tables and federating tables that look like they're in different databases. It all looks like it's sitting in HANA.
So what happened to the query optimizer when you mix extended tables with native HANA tables?
Right. So that's where the smarts come in, just very similar to Smart Data Access. It maintains statistics on the HANA side, and it will be able to know, when to push down processing down to IQ.
Okay. Very interesting, Connie. I'm excited what I'm hearing right now. I have no more questions coming in from the audience, and we are approaching the hour. Thank you very much, Connie.
Thank you.
Very, very interesting and great presentation. Gives us a lot of thoughts. To the audience, hope we see you all at Isaac Tech in Atlanta. Registration link is right where you see it. And Sapphire Now, which is the American SAP user group in Orlando, where you will find double consulting as well. The entire presentation is recorded, will be available on YouTube. I will send out an email as soon as it's available to the attendees. And also on our website, it will be available as well as a PDF version of the presentation, so you can download it and review it at your leisure. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.